right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the elephants in the room, and that is Senator Elizabeth Warren's candidacy. She had devastating results last night. Let's throw up the map of the election from last night, and it basically shows that she did not come in any more than third in any state, even in her own home state. And just to give you an idea of how much that underperforms even her own campaign's ridiculous expectations, her campaign manager, Roger Lau, put out that memo about why she's not going to drop out before Super Tuesday. He promised Warren supporters that they were going to finish in the top 2 of the 8 out of the 14 Super Tuesday states, and that she was definitively going to win her own home state. Well, what ended up happening? She got third in Massachusetts to Senator Bernie Sanders and to former Vice President Joe Biden. She didn't finish second in a single one of these Super Tuesday states. Overall, massively underperformed expectations and only picked up a handful of delegates across the country. California remains to be seen, but it has basically been shown that there has been a referendum. Overall, she was not able to drive out any working class voters. Her base is disproportionately upper middle class white liberals. We should always remember, only county that Senator Elizabeth Warren won in Iowa was its most educated county. She was never able to break out of that. It's why she has so much of a media constituency, but doesn't have any real voter constituency. But what really galls me is that her campaign, after showing so terribly on Super Tuesday, puts out this email to its supporters asking for more donations in order to keep up with, quote, keep up the momentum for the 6 more primaries that are just 1 week away. Don't forget, she's already made an ad buy across March 9th. So she seems, for all intents and purposes, that she is going to be in this race. Now, people keep saying, oh, she might be reevaluating, it could be a head fake. But at this point, it seems genuine to look at the results from last night. And we can see that her margins of the 10 to the 13%, and we know based on Morning Consult data what the second choice is, that she almost certainly cost Senator Sanders a big Super Tuesday win, or at the very least, the ability to compete with Joe Biden. The structural factors against Sanders were such that the establishment coalesced around Joe, the left generally coalesced around Biden, but there was just enough of a 10 to 13% margin that stuck with Senator Warren, despite the fact the establishment coalesced, despite the fact that the left is consolidating around Sanders. And that vote is fundamentally really at odds with the campaign that she began. You know, I'm thinking of this morning about how much that she has benefited Joe Biden in this race by staying in last night, and about how she began her campaign, began her career. She began her career in Washington sparring with Joe Biden and others over bankruptcy bills back in 2005. She began her career savaging financial elites. She began her career really as an antithesis of everything that she currently stands for, which is basically as a yes queen figure to so many upper middle class white liberal women across the country. And ultimately, she's just helping Joe Biden. That's the role that she's played as a spoiler, both to Sanders. She's played a spoiler to the issues that she purports to care about. And even right now, when she's campaigning against Joe Biden, her very presence in the race is such that she is essentially helping the one person who stands for everything that she says that she allegedly does not believe. And that's one thing I wanted to go over with you, Crystal. I know you said that Senator Sanders should pick her as her vice presidential pick, just in terms of game change, media makeup. But Elizabeth Warren began her career railing against banks, railing against Joe Biden's bankruptcy push.
Yep.
And today, when's the last time we heard about that from Elizabeth Warren?
Yep.
Nothing. She sat there and let Biden take credit for the CFPB up on the stage. She sat there. I mean, we played it here on the show. The day after she bought $10 million in ads for corruption, calling out corruption here in Washington, D.C., she could not say one word about Hunter Biden's corrupt dealings with Ukraine. From the very beginning of this campaign, she has refused to really embody the ethos of her early political career, which led you to call her for a run for president back in 2016.
Yep.
Now she's just runs on gender and race tokenism. And and by the way, it turns out that the race tokenism didn't end up working for actual people of color.
Well, and for a lot of Sanders supporters, the deja vu of 2016 is so striking because, look, what does Bernie Sanders need more than anything? He needs some friends. need some validators, need some allies, need some people that, that like normal people in the suburbs look and go, oh, if that person is vouching for him, like he's not scary, right? And in 2016, and again this time around, Elizabeth Warren could have been that person. Now, look, I really don't like the telling people to drop out thing. I think you've got a campaign, you've got supporters, you've made promises. It's complicated, et cetera. But the fact remains that the centrists knew which side they were on, right? The moderates, the corporatists, the establishment, whatever you're going to call it.
Instantly.
They knew what side they were on. And Elizabeth Warren's entire campaign has been about trying to straddle that line. And so when it came down to it, when the chips were falling out, when it's clear she had no path, I mean, this was clear long before Super Tuesday, rather than picking a side, she tried to continue to straddle. And by doing so, by default, she helped the centrists and the corporatists. Because look, what have we learned? The media narrative is
everything.
King. So on the one hand, you look at her margin, she didn't get that many, not all of her supporters would necessarily go to Bernie, but he picks up Massachusetts. Maine, which is still, as far as I know, too close to call, definitely goes to Bernie. Minnesota may be different, right? You've got a very different media narrative coming out of Super Tuesday, but even putting that aside, before you even get there, why was there such a massive swing to Joe Biden, an unprecedented swing to Joe Biden leading into Super Tuesday? It's because the media narrative over the days after South Carolina was this one endorses, that one endorses, the other one endorses. They're all in Texas together. Here's the rally. Here's what they're all doing. If you could have countered that with, but the progressives are lining up over here. And I don't want to put this just on Elizabeth Warren. I think the Sanders team has assumed that everyone is against them and haven't tried to build those bridges, because right after Nevada, right, after he had won the popular vote in Iowa, won New Hampshire, won Nevada with a huge margin, there was a moment when they should have gotten on the phone and called every even remotely favorable establishment type figure, Beto and Corey, and certainly warned all these people and said, this is the winning team. Now's the time to get on board. Now's the time to get on board. Then you have friends and validators so that suburban voters look and go, oh, okay, this is the electability candidate. Right. This is someone I'm comfortable with. And then you have a very different dynamic.
Certainly. And the reason I care about this, the reason I'm even talking about this, is because it validates something I have said from the very beginning about Elizabeth Warren, which is she's a phony. She came out there, came into D.C., railing against the banks and finance and all that, and ended up just being a sociology professor who's spouting critical race theory. I mean, that's ultimately all we ever got from her campaign. She doesn't seem to actually care about the financial, segmentation in our economy and all this. And she ends up helping the person who best embodies neoliberal trade policy, neoliberal banking policy, neoliberal foreign policy, which is Joe Biden. I guess I'm going to have to break out my greatest hits about what exactly a Biden presidency is going to mean for this country. And ultimately, her staying in the race, she's a smart person. I think she knows exactly what she's doing. I think her campaign knows exactly what they are doing, is benefiting truly a Hillary 2.0 figure, except that this one can actually speak. And I think that is something which is really unconscionable if you purport to care about the things that you laid out in the beginning of your career, of what you allegedly fought for. I mean, some of those initial white papers on economic patriotism and all of that, none of that ended up materializing.
The one thing she still has, and this is why in my radar I made the case for, look, I don't know that she would do it, right, at this point. But the reason I made the case for it's time for Bernie to say, I want you to be my VP, come join the ticket, I need you, is because the one thing she still has is media love.
That's right.
They don't remember who it was that said, Elizabeth Warren is identity politics for the media. They want a woman. They love the, intersectional language. Oh, yeah. She's so smart, and she is really smart. I'm not saying she's a very smart person, right? The technocratic, all of that is something the media loves. And the suburban voters tend to go with whoever the media tells them they should go with. It's the one thing, look, she didn't have strength in terms of the working class. She didn't her organizational strength didn't end up paying off for her. But what Bernie needs now more than anything is a media win to put him back in the game. And that's why I think even though Look, I don't think she'd be the strongest person on the ticket by any means.
No
You would
way.
love to be in a
Yeah.
place to make the choice that, would actually further the ticket, be the best in line with your movement, your message, et cetera. Elizabeth Warren's not that choice. But she may be the only person who would take the job potentially, and I don't even know that she would. She probably wouldn't
at this point.
But she's the only one that you could even imagine taking the job who could help to bring back the suburbs and bring back the media narrative. And those two things are very closely related.
Yeah. All right.
Next up on Rising, Sanders campaign senior advisor Chuck Rocha weighs in on Bernie's Super Tuesday haul when Rising continues.